Hello, hello, and welcome to Decaf, a production of the Beacon Center of Tennessee. I am Taylor here in rainy, stormy, hail was just falling on my house, Nashville, while Mark is joining us from Seaside, right outside Seaside in Blue Mountain Beach, Florida on Highway 30A. I was just down there less than a month ago. It's so beautiful this time of the year. Mark, how you feeling? Are you just chilling and having a great day in paradise?
Yeah, not such a great day today. Work, a lot of work
Work
happening.
today.
a lot of kind of crisis mode at work for a new report. But I think we got to figure it out now. So it's nice, we're very lucky we get to work remotely, and I can be able to do this for a couple of weeks, and I get to work outside in the screened-in porch while it's 65 degrees out. It's kind of perfect. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be talking with you about our topics this week.
Yeah, I stood up while you've been working out on your screen porch. I stood up from my chair twice this morning, once to use the restroom, and the next time to use the restroom and get a handful of shredded cheese because that's all I had time to do. So I am thankful that all of that is behind us and that we get to come and talk on Decaf because Decaf really is the highlight of our week. We couldn't leave our fans, our listeners in the lurch. So we're just glad to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. Look at my phone. I think I have, about 30 calls between you, Ron, and Stephanie the last 5 hours trying to. So while you've been sitting down, I've been just pacing around on the phone trying to figure out some technical issues we've had with an upcoming report.
People have different responses, fight, flight, or freeze. I'm a freeze, and I was frozen to my chair until I needed a handful of shredded cheese. And ladies and gentlemen, the reason we exercise is so that we can eat shredded cheese by the handful. And I will stand by that until the day that I die. Speaking of the report, now that our technical issues are resolved and we have it out, let's talk about our much anticipated report about healthcare in Tennessee. So we talked about this a few times, certificate of need. You might not be familiar with it, so I'll give you a crash course real quick. A certificate of need is basically like a permission slip from the government to open a healthcare facility, a hospital, a standalone emergency room, various things like that. Healthcare facilities also in the past have needed certificates of need to add more beds to a hospital to increase their capacity. It really is, in my opinion, a racket because certificate of need laws it was a federal law up until the 1980s, and the federal government said, wait a second, we don't need these anymore. And so they abolished them from the federal level, but there are still a few holdout states that keep certificate of need in play. And it limits access to healthcare for so many people who live in rural areas and a certificate of need is denied and they then have to drive to a larger metropolitan area to get access to care. It limits how many patients, hospitals, standalone ERs, whatever can deal with. We told a story once of Michelle Gross. If you don't remember Michelle and her daughter Asher, who had very significant medical needs, they needed at-home health services and they couldn't access those because of a certificate of need in their area. And so these laws really do hinder healthcare more than I think a lot of other things that people kind of freak out about. And so we released a report today about certificate of need denials in Tennessee. Did a lot of research, a lot of data collection about where certificates of need were denied in various counties across the state, how many certificate of need applications there have been in recent years. And it really highlights the simple fact, which is this: certificate of need is 1, unnecessary, 2, cumbersome, and 3, restrictive. That's how I always describe certificate of need to my friends who do not work in policy and do not know what I'm talking about. Mark, what were some of your main takeaways from this research that we released today?
Well, I actually think in some ways that you're almost giving certificate of need not as bad of a name as it should have, because look, all those things that you said are true, but the real fact of it is it costs people's lives. It literally is responsible for deaths. There's a Mercatus study that said that reductions in mortalities in heart attacks, heart failures, and pneumonia were when you got rid of certificate of need laws that actually reduced that. So outside of all those other things, which are all true, everything's true, you might have to go an extra 20 minutes to the yard. That could be problematic, but it literally costs people their lives. So having these CO, and it's not an exaggeration, and it's not some kind of talking point. It's true. And I don't know the exact number, and it might not be a ton, but certificate of need has been responsible for people dying. And that's strong. And because the government is involved in, and it's not just the government. That's one other thing. It is unelected bureaucrats. It's not somebody you elect that you can say, oh, I'm not happy. These are unelected bureaucrats. And the fact is, outside of Iraq, it is, this is basically costing Tennesseans their lives. And
It
I'm not
is.
okay with that because it's more government interaction that needs to be. And it's saying, you know what? You want to open a hospital? Great. You want an ER? Great. That's perfect because, somebody is going to save 20 minutes. That's going to an ER, which can be the difference between life and death. That's
especially when you're having a heart attack, when someone with respiratory issues is having an asthma attack. 20 minutes is life or death. When a high risk mother is in labor, 20 minutes can be the difference. 10 minutes can be the difference in life and death in those situations. And when I say racket, this is kind of what I'm talking about. So when a medical organization that wants to open a new facility has to go before the CON board, the CON board is a board of their competitors. So Ron put it this way in a blog post a couple years ago that made a lot of sense to me. Imagine a Chick-fil-A wants to open in your neighborhood, and there are 4 corners on this street that they can open on. On one corner, there's a Popeyes. On one corner, there's a McDonald's. And on one corner, there's a Zaxby's. And Chick-fil-A wants to open on the 4th corner. Chick-fil-A would have to go before a board of Popeyes, McDonald's, and Zaxby's, and they could say, we don't need any more fried chicken in this area. That's the equivalent of what a certificate of need does with much higher stakes. These medical facilities have to go before a board of their peers and competitors to prove the need in their area. I don't know about you, but if someone came to me and said, I'd like to build a cancer center here because the next closest one is 40 minutes away, and I don't want unhealthy high-risk cancer patients to have to drive 40 minutes every single day to get their radiation or once a week to get chemo or whatever, I would say, do you want my house? Do you want to build it in my house? Like I would do anything to get a cancer center like that, a standalone ER, things like that. So, it really is, certificate of need really is a racket. I would encourage everyone to go to our website, beacontn.org. Our certificate of need paper will be up on our research page. You should definitely check that out and just read about this very unknown. It's shocking to me how unknown this law is because I won't mention any names, but in Alabama, when I was a little girl, a hospital executive went to prison for a very long time for bribery on their certificate of need board. And so it shocks me that people don't really know what certificate of need is because it is one of the biggest rackets that we have to deal with in the states that are holdouts.
And in some ways, it can kind of already be legalized bribery. Like, right? It's a legal thing, and it can be legalized bribery. And it's like, you don't need to, it's really tough to say that people don't deserve healthcare, options in their neighborhood because the government says no. Not because there's not a need for it, not because there's not a market for it, there is. But
there's never not a need for healthcare options. I'm sorry, there's not.
And there's people, and again, they're saying that they can make money, and this is a good investment for them. And their competitors who are making money saying, oh, no, it's not. But like, we're talking about people's lives. And it's almost it's not a monopoly exactly, but it's kind of like a monopoly. You need government permission to do that. So I do also want to bring one other point up, which I think was interesting, that Ron kind of looked it up, and he said that most denials are in a location that basically is considered underserved medically or it disproportionately affects underserved groups. Populations. So the very people who need it the most are the ones where the denials are happening the most. It's not like a lot of denials are happening in the city of Nashville. There's a million choices. You're talking about small counties. There's a lot of denials in Cleveland, that area, Cleveland. And it's just, you see these numbers and you're like, why is this happening? And it's problematic, and the government should not be involved in that. If a hospital, or if an ER thing or whatever they want to do and doesn't make enough money, maybe it'll close them. But they're saying there's a market for it, and it should not be up to unelected bureaucrats who have they don't answer to anybody, and they can just choose what they want to do, and that's not fair.
Or people who already have a stake in the game.
Yeah, competitors or unelected bureaucrats. Yeah, best case scenario is unelected bureaucrats.
Seriously. So it's a CON is a huge racket, and it's costing Tennesseans lives. So if you care about those things, go check out our report and tell us what you think about it. We would love to hear if you've had an experience having to drive really far to get to a medical facility because something was denied in your area, or if you don't know if it was denied in your area and you want us to find out. Honey, we got the data. We got a good map. You can see exactly every county, how many, or actually every area, how many CON, not closures, but where the CON denials there were. Yeah. So it's cool to see, really good interactive map. So we will, you'll see that tomorrow. It's our first little venture in data visualization. So everybody check that out and see what you think about that and let us know. Mark, we're going to throw it back for our next topic to November. Think about November when we were up until the very middle of the night on our election show. And we started seeing results come in of Republicans losing after former President Trump said, if they win, credit me. If they lose, don't credit me. I looked it up on YouTube because I thought you were lying.
No, you said that.
So I looked it up on
don't
YouTube, and I just want to ask you this simple question. Do you think that President Trump's influence in the GOP is waning? And if why or why not?
So this really comes on the heels too of what we saw with the speaker fight over Kevin McCarthy, where there was 20 holdouts for a while. Eventually, Speaker McCarthy got the votes. But one of the interesting tidbits was the holdouts were for the most part, to the right, pretty conservative. I think they'd say more conservative than the average legislators. And President Trump pled with them to say, hey, support Kevin McCarthy. And these are people who are, they all love Trump. These are kind of his people. And they didn't budge.
Matt Gaetz nominated Trump like a bunch of times.
After Trump said to vote for McCarthy, Matt Gaetz voted for Trump. So these are the people who are these are the people who are the most loyal to him for the most part. And when he told them to do that, they didn't budge. They voted, probably 6, 7, 8 more times against Kevin McCarthy after that. So it makes you think and I'm not talking about the actual voters. I think that's a separate this thing that I don't know. But the question is, what kind of pull does President Trump still have on the Republicans in Congress? It's clearly not zero. I mean, it's
not zero. All right.
But fair. It's interesting to look at when we see what happened in the last election, which you can blame whoever you want. There's it depends on who you do. But if you're a Republican, a lot of people are blaming, a lot of the Republicans say, oh, it's because of President Trump or because President Trump, whatever. And a lot of people are saying, no, it's not because of that. But either way, it's clear that he might not, that President Trump probably doesn't have the pull with voters that he may have had at one time.
I agree.
So the question becomes, what is his role in this party now? He said he's running for president, right? Is Ron DeSantis going to run? But it's just these people who were so loyal to him. And basically the first 2 years he was in office, it felt like every word from every congressman and every senator was President Trump this, President Trump this, President Trump support me. And people still really want his endorsement in primary.
Sure.
It's a strong endorsement.
Yes, it's a former president, whether you like it or not. He's a former president.
And it's a former president that's very popular among the right. I mean, he's
right.
The question is, with everything going on, and he started going after, I think, some people that other conservatives like. He went after Ron DeSantis. I think he called him Ron DeSanctimonious.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, he called him Ron. Yeah, and he kind of went after some of the, potentially suspending the Constitution because he didn't like the outcome of the last election. So there's a lot of things that some conservatives are like, I don't know anymore. So I guess the long answer to your question is, it does not seem like President Trump has the same pull that he had in the Republican Party. And some people have been willingly open to kind of disagree with him, which wasn't the case for a long time. Even
people
when they
fell in line for so long.
That's right. And everyone's like, okay, this is, his party. And it's interesting. I'm not, I have no real opinion either way on this, but it's pretty clear that he has lost some of his pull in the party. And it'll be interesting to see how much pull he still has, right? Because if we have a 2024 election with Ron DeSantis, who is pretty broadly popular among all sections of the Republican Party, and certainly more popular among kind of independents and moderate Democrats than President Trump is. But it'll be interesting to see what a primary looks like and how much pull he still has in these politicians. And some of the politicians would say that President Trump's the one who got them elected in the first place.
Right.
I mean, they would say 2016 was a great year for them. They exceed a lot of expectations. And so it'll just be interesting to see what that looks like coming up, because you have kind of two sections. And there's one part of the party that says, I really like President Trump. I think he's a great president. I just think he's hurting us at the polls at this point. And do we have to abandon him, even though I might like him personally? It's like he keeps, he's in the news often for maybe not the best of reasons. It's something he said or did.
The shiniest reasons.
Where I said, when he was president, he did, I think we can all agree, he certainly did some good things, maybe a lot of good things, where he's in the news for good things. But it seems like more recently he's been in the news for things that are not as positive because he's not president anymore. So it will be interesting to see what happens. We've talked about it's kind of a coin toss. If you look kind of the betting markets and the thing whether DeSantis or Trump would win a Senate, assuming they both run. And this is where I can say that Trump does not have the same pull, because 4 years ago, when Trump ran for re-election, not one person would consider primarying him. That's kind of on the conservative side. Now multiple people are considering, even if he runs.
Yes. So I think that, I think you just gave us a pretty good rundown. So I guess the long and short of it is inconclusive, and we'll see. But it's definitely an interesting discussion to debate. And I personally can't wait to see it. You know, I try to keep my nose out of national politics a lot.
Yeah.
It's not really my cup of tea. I know you like it a lot more. I don't love it. But I do love to see kind of like the social study aspects of it, of how people respond over time, what makes people tick, what will make them switch sides from a Trump to a DeSantis. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking forward to seeing as we get closer and closer to another presidential election year.
But we also have to realize one more thing is that we don't know anything. We are guessing all these things.
We don't know anything.
But if you listen to anybody's normal opinion, 2016, there's, a nominee Rubio or Ted Cruz so nobody thought Trump was going to win there.
No.
And everyone assumed there's going to be President Hillary Clinton. It was not President Hillary Clinton. Now, a lot of people thought there'd be a President Trump in 2020, and that didn't happen. So I do think all of these things are just kind of us taking all the information we have and guessing, but people decide things at the polls. And it'll be interesting, though, because we're talking not so much about elections, but about the current Republican Party. If a lot of the current members decide to back someone else, it will just be an interesting thing. And like I said, my preference or whatever is not really relevant in terms of what I'm talking about here. I just like the horse race, kind of the sports aspect of seeing how things go. And it's like, and again, you just said Joe Biden, if you would have talked about him being a huge drag on the ballot 3 months ago, and he wasn't. You know? And then in 2 years, you might be like, oh, he's going to be great. And maybe he could be a huge drag.
And maybe he's not.
Politics, anytime we're talking that far ahead, it's almost impossible because things change on a weekly basis.
But if you want to know what we're looking at leading into 2024, it's these dynamics, because this is what's going to be interesting, and this is what's going to be the most entertaining part of the game.
That's right.
Speaking of the game and an entertaining game, we did not get one Monday night. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I do not like Georgia. I think I've said it every single podcast we've had this fall. I do not care for them. I do not care for the Bulldogs. I think their little pads they put on the defensive player with the spikes, I think they look silly. I do not care for Georgia. I wore my big purple furry jacket into both of the parties that I went to Monday night with pride, even when my little horned frogs were not feeling so feisty anymore. They were not jumping. Mark, okay, here are my two questions for you, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm asking you a lot of questions today.
Yep.
One, what the heck happened? And two, should someone else have been in that spot?
Yeah, all good questions. The first thing is Georgia was the better team. It was clear. TCU played about their worst game of the year. Georgia played their best game of the year. But I think no matter what, it wasn't a close game, and there was one team that was clearly superior. And it's part of it is there's a matchup thing, right? It's like, because look, Michigan beat Ohio State by 3 touchdowns. TCU beat Michigan, and then Georgia beat Ohio State by 1 and got lucky, and then TCU lost by like 60 to them. So it was a bad matchup for them to begin with. I was hoping TCU won. I didn't feel that confident. I thought that Georgia would win. I'm very surprised at how bad it was, though.
That was shocking to me, how bad it was. I was expecting at least like a good game, but dude, by the third quarter, I was just chit-chatting about serial killers. Like, I was not paying a lick of attention to that game, and neither were the Georgia fans around me.
No, me and Kieran went to this bar to watch a game. We're like, okay, there's about 3 minutes left in the half. We're gonna go. It's over. There's no reason to stay for the game. It was an embarrassing game, and TCU showed they're not quite on that national level yet. I mean, they did beat Michigan. They played great. Again, that was one of those games that Michigan was the better team. They just made some mistakes, and TCU had 2 pick sixes. The second part of the question is, yes, TCU did deserve to be there. They had 1 loss the whole year. It was in the Big 12 championship game barely. They beat a bunch of ranked teams. They beat a Michigan team who was supposed to be really good. They deserve to be there. They just didn't deserve to win. And that's pretty clear. And, they're not the second best team in the country. If I'm guessing, they're probably not even one of the top, 10 teams in the country. But that's not important. It's what their resume was and what they put together. They deserve to be there. They beat Michigan, and they lost to Georgia. So, there's no question that I don't think anybody in the right mind would argue that somebody deserved to be there over TCU.
I don't know. I kind of wanted to see a Michigan-Georgia final. That's my take. I wanted to see a Michigan-Georgia final.
Georgia could have won, too. Michigan could have won. They probably would have lost, but it would have been a much closer game because they match up.
I think so, too. Yeah.
I would see that too, but the fact is, it doesn't take away the fact that TCU deserved to be there.
TCU beat Michigan.
That's right.
I'm sad for Michigan that they didn't get a shot to play
They
Georgia
did
for
the
the
shot.
championship.
They blew it.
That's fair. I know they did. They did blow it
as a favorite against a team, and they kept throwing pick sixes, and every big play they didn't make. So, like, I don't want to hear about how they didn't get a shot. Like,
that's fair.
If we're talking about Tulane or Alabama didn't get a shot, fine, but they had their chance in the regular season. So, like, it worked out the way it should. Georgia deserved the national championship. Again, they were outplayed by Ohio State, but good teams find ways to win, and Georgia found a way to win even when they got outplayed. So they deserve to win. There's no question about that. It's funny that the final rankings also, and that's the stuff, like, because Ohio State loses by 1 to Georgia, TCU loses by 1 million, but yet they did. Yep. The final rankings had TCU at number 2, and Ohio State actually at number 4.
Wow!
Because Michigan State beat the crap out of Ohio State.
That's so true. That is so true. And then one more thought before we move on to our next topic is the way too early top 25 came out the night of the game. Yep. And Florida State is at number 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. What's the deal with that? Explain that, because I'm like,
it's a bad rank. Yeah, it's a bad ranking.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, but I didn't want you to shake your head at me and call me an idiot again. I can't take that. My emotions can't handle that today.
The ACC is a horrendous conference, and just because they finish strong, like, everyone's so excited about them next year, but this is the same issue, and I'll tell you the team that this happens to. It's Florida State, it's Miami, it's Florida, the teams that are not good, and they kind of have a little run again, like, oh, they're a top 10 team because of all the talent they have. They're not a top 10 team. They'll finish 8-4 next year. They're talking about Jordan Travis, the Heisman candidate. He is not a Heisman candidate. It's just kind of a joke. But I do see that, like, which is interesting. I think that I saw Alabama at 5, which is the lowest they have started in. I guess they just don't have. Well, not ever, but in the past, like,
ever. We're gonna show them. We're not putting up with that.
I think the talent is going to be down a little bit next year for Alabama compared to what it normally is. And then there's new teams, and Michigan's bringing basically everyone back.
I know, so that's scary.
It was Georgia and Michigan 1-2. I think Notre Dame's going to be really tough. They have, like, the best quarterback in the transfer portal went from Wake Forest to Notre Dame, so they have a quarterback now. And there's other teams that are bringing a lot of people back. Teams like Utah who are tough bringing people back, right? Ohio State just keeps reloading, and they have the best player in the country, Marvin Harrison. And there's other teams, like, the one thing you have to watch out for is LSU is bringing all this talent back.
I know.
Like, knows how to coach, and they're going to be getting people. So LSU's a tough out.
Scary.
And Georgia's just obviously going to be good forever, it seems like.
I know.
It was funny watching. I don't know if you saw the. Did you watch the game where, like, Nick Saban was there talking about the game?
Oh yeah, saw him.
And when David Pollack said, "Well, Georgia is the one who's taken over college football," and you saw the look on his face, it was
he
right.
was not having it.
Happy, but I think he's smart to understand that is the case, and if anything, it'll motivate him. I don't think he probably disagrees.
No, but I think it definitely will motivate him. Well, I have to say, I have criticized Stetson Bennett all year. And I'm not stopping now. I wasn't aware of this prior to the game, but he's got that big curly hair and, like, very, like, you watch the OC, very Seth Cohen, like the curly hair. He got a fade before, I think it was the LSU game, and he was just absolutely going off. And before this game, he got another fade. And so all night, I was watching I watched the first half of the game with the family that I'm super close to. They have 3 sons. And all 3 of the boys were like, it's the fade, because he scored 2 rushing touchdowns before I even left. So, I don't necessarily believe in good mojo, but I do believe in good mojo. And I wear the same socks every time I want something good to happen. I should have worn those socks today. But every time I want something good to happen, I wear the same socks. So maybe for Stetson Bennett, it's the hair. I don't know. But if he makes a run in the NFL, he needs to keep those fades up, because I don't know if he's got a shot in the NFL, but if he's got a fade, maybe he does.
One, he played a perfect game, about as near as perfect as I said. And, like, that's not, he's clearly not as talented. Although, TCU's quarterback's not a talented guy. I mean, he's somebody who didn't start. He got benched. He didn't even start the first game this year. He got he got benched, and then the starter got hurt, and then he came second to the Heisman. But these guys are not, like, highly recruited talents. Stetson Bennett, I think he's not. I don't hate him as much as you, but he's really arrogant, it seems like, on the field. But you got to give the guy credit for what he did. I mean, he played a perfect game, and he will not be an NFL starting quarterback. He might get drafted, like, in the last rounds or be a free agent. I don't think he ever plays in the NFL, but you never know. Like, you have to give a guy credit. I I saw a picture of him holding the national championship trophy and Tom Brady with a ring and said, "Oh, both of these guys won at 40 plus years old because he's like 25. He's
so
really
old.
I know, but you got to give him credit. I don't think he'll make it in the NFL, but he has improved so much from when I first saw him, 2 years ago, that you got to give the guy credit. He's a good player and good.
And he's a hard worker. He's clearly a hard worker.
Yep.
And hard work can cure anything. It can fix
anything. It can pay off. That's right.
It can definitely pay off. Okay, before we go, fun topic of the day, hot takes of the day. We're talking underrated and overrated television shows. This is going to be some of my hottest takes. Might get fired. I don't know. But dude, I don't like Seinfeld. I'm sorry. Justin likes Seinfeld. My boyfriend likes Seinfeld. All these people around me like Seinfeld. Dude, it ain't for me. I'm sorry. It ain't for me. I don't think it's funny.
I'm with you. I tried. And I think, here's the thing is, I try to think about it from the time frame. It may have been funny at the time. Things have changed. Sure. Like, it's crazy watching Friends up because Friends is like the least funny show ever. But
I think it's so funny.
It's not. It's not funny. But at the time, I can understand that. Like, I feel like there's so many shows that have done what they've done better. I think what Friends was good at, it was kind of the original one of that. And it was because of that, it was funny. There's some like ha-ha parts, but it's not a funny show. I think Seinfeld is along the same thing. I think I probably would have thought they were funny if I watched it at the time.
In the 90s, yeah.
I don't view it the same.
Maybe Friends is just like my comfort show. I've watched it so many times.
It's not a bad show. It's just not that funny.
That's true. Okay, so that's our overrated. We are unanimous on overrated show. Unless you have more. Do you have more overrated shows? I feel like you're more of a hater than I am.
No, I'm not. I have the one show that I don't get. There's two shows. Breaking Bad got so much credit. It is fine. I like it. I'm not trying to say it's awful.
I think it's scary.
One of the best shows ever. It's fine. It's like, it's okay. It goes on too long. I'm just not that into it. And I think Game of Thrones is overrated. I don't quite understand why people love it so much. I'm not saying it's bad. See, that's the thing, too. I'm not saying bad. I'm saying overrated where people are like, it's the greatest television show ever. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I think Game of Thrones really is the greatest television show ever.
There's a million characters, and you can't keep track of any of them.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. If you obsess over it like I do. You know, I hyperfixate though. This is like what I do is I hyperfixate on things. So I hyperfixated on Game of Thrones. Okay, so underrated television shows. Mark, I'm genuinely scared of what you're going to say, so I'm going to go first. Okay. I only, for the very first time ever, watched Felicity a few months ago. Uh-huh. A show from the early 2000s about a girl named Felicity who moves to New York. I don't really remember it being talked about that much when I was a young teenager. People definitely don't talk about it now the way they talk about other shows from when we were young teenagers, like One Tree Hill and Gossip Girl and the OC and stuff like that. People don't talk about Felicity like that. And justice for Felicity, that show slaps. I freaking love that show, and everyone should watch it. That's my underrated pick.
Felicity was, so I watched maybe one or two episodes. I don't really have any feelings either way, so I'm not going to disagree with you. I feel like Felicity was to a little bit of an older demographic though than One Tree Hill and stuff. So even, I think that was kind of like early 30s, like maybe your age now is why you like it. But like maybe at the time, and it came out, but like that was kind of late to mid 90s. So that's not something that people like us would have watched.
That's true because like the OC and Gossip Girl and stuff like that and One Tree Hill, those were about high schoolers, and I started watching it when I was in middle school.
Exactly.
So Felicity is about a college girl, and I'm watching it now as a 31-year-old. So, okay, that makes sense. That checks out. All right, I can see that.
For a while, I never thought of it as a great show, but if I remember correctly, it's probably on for 6 or 7 seasons, right? Is that right? It
was 4 seasons. It's one season for all of her years of college. So it started when she went to college, ended when she left college, which, again, underrated value in a show. One Tree Hill went on way too long, and even though I love that show, it went on way too long. The OC went on way too long. There are shows that went on longer than they should have.
I think Felicity would have gone on way too long if people wanted it to, because usually when shows get canceled is when they don't go on too long. But
it's fair. Whatever.
I am not arguing with that.
Okay. So what is your underrated television show? And please, Mark, don't embarrass me.
This is actually, I think I have the best answer for this. I think it's the best underrated television show that there is in history. So people love Yellowstone. People keep talking about Yellowstone, right? That's a big thing that everyone loves.
It is
so here's the thing. That is a carbon copy of a much better show that people don't talk about. There's a show called Longmire that was essentially done 3 or 4 years before. It's on Netflix. It's the version of that, but it's so much better. It's in Montana, the same thing. Now the guy's the police chief, so it's a little bit different, but it's essentially the same type of story, except better. It's a better show. And it's funny because they're both on Peacock. So if you go on Peacock, you can see.
I'm gonna watch this. I live and breathe for Yellowstone.
So Yellowstone, here's a fun thing. Yellowstone, 75%, Longmire 88%. So even people think Longmire's better, but it just didn't get the same. And it's like it's the same thing with they have like the Native American tribe that it's kind of it's almost a carbon copy of it. It's like I guarantee whoever made Yellowstone saw Longmire and said, "This is really good. I think I can make it more like, you know, commercial and popular." But Longmire's 5 seasons, I think, a great show and one of my favorite shows. And like I watched, so I'm not caught up. I've watched about 2 seasons of Yellowstone. I like it fine, but it's a knockoff of Longmire. Longmire's a better version of Yellowstone, and nobody knows about it. And it's a shame.
You have just blown my mind because I love Yellowstone. I was actually sent a Yellowstone trivia night thing that was happening at the same time as the national championship, so I didn't go, but I would have won that trivia night because I love Yellowstone so much. But now I'm going to go watch Longmire. It's on Peacock. Okay.
Yeah. And if you go to, it's actually on Netflix as well. It's one of the shows that's on both. But if you go to, if you go to Yellowstone on Peacock that you may also like, and the first one's Longmire. It's the same, and Longmire was first, and I just hate that nobody is giving it the credit it's due. I think it got like some like critical praise, like from the critics and stuff.
Wow.
But then it hasn't gotten the love for whatever reason. Yellowstone really broken, and it's gotten every culture, it seems like, every person, every age. Longmire's first. So far, Longmire's better, and it's kind of copying the good versions of it. And I like Yellowstone so far.
You are blowing my mind, and I am going to watch this starting tonight. After the day we've had, I'm tucking myself into bed with a couple pieces of string cheese, and I'm going to watch Longmire and a glass of wine. I'm going to watch Longmire tonight.
I would literally bet $1,000 that you love it.
Oh, I know I'm going to love it.
I'm that confident in that.
Because you know how much I love Yellowstone, so I know I'm going to love it. I love Western shows like that.
And it's like, and it's the same thing. I like the Western shows that are based in today, which this is, and it's kind of the old. And I always love the issues because there's the Indian tribes and there's the border, and it's like, you know, they have different rules over there about it. Yep, and that's exactly what it is before this show. I swear. So Taylor Sheridan, I think, is the guy who did it. If he didn't base it off Longmire, I would be shocked.
Okay, well, I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to make you know me, I hyperfixate, obviously. Yep. I'm going to make a comparison of Longmire and Yellowstone. I'm going to make a list.
Better. I really bet you like Longmire better.
Okay. All right. I'm sold. Well, that is all for us today. Don't forget to check out our website for that new CON report. Tell us what you think about that. Tell us if you have any experiences with not being able to access healthcare in your area. We would love to talk to you about it and see if there's anything that we can do to help on our end. And with that, this is Decaf, a production of the Beacon Center, Tennessee. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, and we will see you next week.